The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has welcomed a UN experts report which found evidence that M23 fighters and Rwandan troops jointly attacked a large Congolese army base in Rumangambo in eastern northern Kivu province on the 25th of May. Kinshasa hopes that the conclusions would soon be reached to put an end to Rwanda's interference and bring back lasting peace. Rwanda has, however, dismissed the report as baseless.
The United Nations group of experts says it has solid evidence that Rwandan troops have been fighting alongside a rebel group in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. That finding was contained in a confidential report seen by Reuters on Thursday. Since May, fighters from the M23 group have been waging their most sustained offensive in years, killing dozens and displacing tens of thousands of people. Rwanda has previously denied Congo's allegations that it supports M23 and that it has sent troops into the country. M23 has also denied receiving Rwandan support. However, the UN group's report said members of the Rwandan Defense Forces had conducted joint attacks with M23 fighters against Congo's army and Congolese armed groups, and provided rebels with weapons, ammunition and uniforms. Its evidence included photos of Rwandan soldiers in an M23 camp, drone footage showing columns of hundreds of soldiers marching near the Rwandan border, and photos and videos showing M23 fighters with new uniforms and equipment similar to those of the Rwandan army. Rwandan authorities did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Congo's government spokesman welcomed the report, writing on Twitter that the truth always triumphs in the end. The M23 insurgency stems from the long fallout from the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. It was formed in 2012 to defend the interests of Congolese Tutsis against Hutu militias. A target of the M23 and Rwandan operations has been the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, a Hutu militia that Rwanda accuses Congo of using as a proxy. Congo's government has denied this. The UN group's report said some members of Congo's army have supported and fought alongside a coalition of armed groups, including the FDLR. Rwanda and neighbouring Uganda have a long history of military intervention inside Congo. The two countries invaded in 1996 and 1998, claiming they were defending themselves against local militia groups.
Well, for some analysis, we're now joined by Channel Africa producer and commentator, particularly on the Great Lakes region, Nixon Katembo. Nixon, always good to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thanks for having me once again.
All right. This is something that you've been saying for some time, even before the UN panel of experts came up with this report. What did you see in the report that was so compelling that it cannot be resisted?
Well, I think the credible evidence that the UN have come out with, some of which we have been saying on this very program, although Kigali has been denying it. And I can quote some. For example, on 26th of January this year, Rwandese soldiers called Wazeneza John was captured by the Congolese army inside the DRC. On the 29th of May, there were two other soldiers that were captured. They were paraded even to the extent when the Congolese National Army spokesperson in Eastern Congo said that we have a credible evidence that Rwanda is interfering.
But Kigali says
not
that
only that
they were kidnapped inside DRC.
we are used to this. On the 24th of July, another Rwandese soldiers called Kubwimana Elise was also captured. What more evidence does Rwanda want to know that these are, and worse still, they are captured with army cards, Rwandese identity cards, and all other gears, military gears that have RDF insignias. So there is no way you can circumvent this evidence.
Kigali did say, though, that these soldiers were kidnapped. Are we saying that that's not the case?
You have to be understanding how information war happen in terms of maneuvering the strategy in trying to save face. And in this case, the idea that these soldiers were kidnapped, if they were kidnapped, how were they kidnapped, under what circumstances? Why did they find themselves in the Congo in the first place? We know for the fact that Bigogo military camp, which housed the Rwandese special forces, is not so far from the Congolese border. And in fact, they just cross a border. There is a place called Murigikeri where they have established Rangers camp. They just cross there, go around Mount Karisimbi, and voila. They just attend where near the Mount Nyiragongo, not so far from Rumangabo military camp. And this has been the modus of operandi over the years. So for a person like me and many others who come from the region, who know the topography of the area, we know what is happening. But for the UN to come out clearly, it's only supporting the evidence of what we have been saying all along. Makenga himself, who is the M23 overall leader and commander at the moment, has his own headquarters in Kabato. Kabato, which is just near Mountain Karisimbi, inside Rwanda. So they come from Kabato, go down the mountain, go into Nagana, and voila. So you have these, topographic areas that are interlinked. The border between the DRC and Rwanda is more or less like the way you see the border between Botswana and South Africa, if you and my king. So it's a border that is porous, that there are no clear demarcation that this is, but locals know exactly this is Rwanda and this is, and moreover, what separated those two borders is the national park. Virunga National Park on the other side, the Volcano National Park.
Tell me about the drone footage, because we spoke to a professor who's a political commentator just yesterday, and he was saying that the drone footage isn't very clear in terms of identifying Rwandan troops.
Leave alone the drone footage. If you have soldiers that have been captured, what more else? The drone footage is just a supplementary of how columns of soldiers have been crossing inside the DRC. Personally, is something that I can prove through the video footage of Rwandan soldiers carrying out their injured soldiers back to Rwanda. I have those videos. Anyone who wants to dispute them, I can show them. So it's a question of trying to speak on issues of the DRC objectively with facts. And when one want to deny facts, unfortunately facts remain facts, whether you deny them, however much you do PR around them, they will always remain facts.
So what might be the next course of action now? The UN Security Council has this evidence. What do they do with it? What should they do with it?
Well, if you look at the structure of the United Nations Security Council, you look at 5 permanent members. 3 out of those 5 permanent members are the very same people supporting Rwanda in its overall destabilization of the region. You have the United States training Rwandan militaries under AFRICOM. It started with the General Kipuwad, who was the overall commander of AFRICOM at the time, based in Djibouti. And then their command was in Stuttgart, Germany. Up until now, they're still there. They've been training these guys for over the years. So you would recall that the first UN mapping report that was produced in 2010 it elicited some reaction from the very same donor countries. They cut the funding to Rwanda, and the economy was somehow affected in Rwanda. And this is what Rwanda do not want to see through these UN reports, because if their reaction for the very countries that support Rwanda, then Rwanda is likely to lose out on a certain key aspect of its economy. The other aspect, though, is within the Congolese government itself. You have a diluted army, and I've been saying this over the years, that you have a diluted army. Currently, there are almost 3 camps within the Congolese National Army. One that is loyal to President Tshisekedi, the second camp that is still loyal to former President Joseph Kabila, and the other camp that are what the Congolese call the infiltrés. In other words, people who have been infiltrated into the Congolese National Army. So the chain of command within the National Congolese Army is somehow almost non-existent. And if it is existent, they give confusing signals to the soldiers on the ground. Therefore, fighting the M23 become ineffective because already certain commanders within the Congolese National Army are compromised. Case in point is the recent one. Now you have the likes of General Chirimwami, who was commanding the eastern flank of, I think, the 34th Battalion in Eastern Goma. Immediately after the M23 captured Bunagana, he wanted to mount an offensive against the M23. But what happened is that the high military commander changed him. They sent him to Ituri. Instead, they brought Yav Filemo. And Yav Filemo, who is more of a person who allied to former President Joseph Kabila. Now, there is a new commander, a sector commander, who I forget his name. He's an assistant to the late Kano Mamadou Ntala. But if you speak to these guys, they just say, no, we get instructions, this is how we get instructed. And the soldiers end up doing nothing. Those who are on the ground, who with their spirit in fighting for the country, they end up being disillusioned. And this is the problem of the DRC.
Right. We won't even get into the MONUSCO aspect of all of this, but what now for the African Union, and even closer, the East African Union, of which the DRC is now a part of? How do they deal with this? Because we now have evidence that's sitting at the UN Security Council that supposedly can't be refuted.
There's so much of evidence that is sitting at the UN Security Council. Many reports have been produced. Unfortunately, those who are form part of the East African community are the very same people who have been creating problems for the DRC. And I cannot figure out in my imagination that you have, and I always give this analogy, a hyenas, you know, discussing a case of an antelope. This is the case for the DRC at the moment. So if you have a scenario of such a nature, I don't see that the East African community will do a meaningful work. Instead, both of them are looking to cement their own economic interest in Eastern DRC. Remember, this is a biggest market among the bloc. So that is the challenge. For MONUSCO, though, they're producing this report out of shame as well, because they had just been involved in the killing of 36 Congolese civilians, which died under MONUSCO's own bullets.
All right.
And this is a peacekeeping operation that came in a country to protect the civilians. So Congo is in a bigger problem. Yeah. And again, Peter, I always say, unfortunately for that country, it hasn't got someone patriotic enough to have a strategic vision for the country, to restructure the institution of the state, to restructure the army in a way that it build a Republican army that is capable of defending the national border of that country.
All right, so perhaps to conclude this conversation as we run out of time, what now between Kinshasa and Kigali? Is that relationship so broken that it can't be fixed? We already saw tensions that were bordering on war in recent times. Where does this report leave these two countries?
Look, relation and tension between Kinshasa and Kigali are seen in a more ambivalent way in my own analysis. And this is why I'm putting that point across. You have Congolese government saying that we are being aggressed. It's the M23 rebel group. They call them terrorists. On the other hand, Rwanda is saying, no, we are not a part of the M23. Those are just Congolese problem. But what pushed them then to go negotiate on behalf of the M23 in Rwanda? Can you imagine that confusion? You are saying I'm not part of the problem, but you are going to negotiate on behalf of the problem that you created. That is one aspect. The Congolese government say, no, we are cutting ties with, but in other side, they are talking behind the scene in mending relation. And one of which is yesterday I was listening to BBC Gahuza Miriango, a leader in the region saying that he's happy that Rwanda is accepted to be part of the East African standby force that's going to be sent into the DRC. According to that particular leader, the DRC has accepted Rwandan forces to be part of. And you imagine yourself, here's a country saying that we are being evaded, yet you allow the forces that you claim to evade you to be part of the force that is seen to be stabilizing your own part that you say that is being evaded. So these are the ambivalent points and the confusions that comes out of the DRC. Unfortunately, it's the local population, it's the future of the DRC, it's the future of the continent. And I always wonder, Peter always say that SADC should be more hands-on in this particular country because this is a member. And you recall that when SADC was a part of this, at least some of the engagement went in a more positive way, i.e. the preparation of the election in 2006. You would recall the training of electoral officers by the South African Electoral Commission, the police, more engagement that when SADC intervened the first M23 war in 2013, it was ended. But wonder,
so SADC should intervene much more. You're not optimistic about the African Union and the East African community, but tensions continue to rise between Kigali and Kinshasa. We'll have to wait and see what the next chapter of this is. But in the meantime, sadly, the people of the DRC are the ones bearing the brunt of this at this time. Nixon, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Thank you so much indeed, always, for your insights. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Nixon Katembo, one of our regular commentators on the Great Lakes region in particular, and also a colleague at Channel Africa.